Welcome to another episode of Life and Whiskey. As always, I'm Jordan, and today we're going to look at Ed Phillips and Sons Company, Princeton, Minnesota. Their Douglas and Todd small batch bourbon. It's 93 proof, which is 46.5% ABV. Sorry, couldn't do the math in my head. Anyways, so they make the claim that they are Minnesota's first craft distillery. I'm not so sure I believe that, since probably if you go back pre-prohibition, there's probably craft distilleries, but maybe they are. Anyways, the name Douglas and Todd comes from the fact that the distillery sits on the border of both Douglas and Todd counties in Minnesota. And so because of that, partly aged on one side and partly aged on the other. So craft distillery in Minnesota, small batch bourbon whiskey. Now my buddy bought me this, who's from Minnesota, but I did look online and you are able to get this across the U.S. Like Total Wines carries it and whatnot. If you look at the price, it's somewhere between $27.99 and $30. It might be a little bit higher depending on where you're from, but somewhere in that ballpark, right? So it's not extremely expensive, which is nice. And yeah, we'll see what Douglas and Todd have to offer. I like this. They have a compass rose on the cap, which is kind of cool. Because being a geography dork, that's always kind of cool in my book. So right away, it has that craft. If you smell a lot of different craft spirits, it has a very similar note to it. It's like this musty, grainy, malty smell to it. And it's a note that I really only find in craft distilleries. Kind of like walking into a grain room, like a musty grain smell. It's not unpleasant. And then behind that, it has a very sweet overtone to it. You can pick up some oak in there. The ethanol comes through, and a little bit of a light fruit, like a light plum, or I don't know what kind of fruit. Some kind of light fruits though, and sweetness, like a honey to it. But that green malty smell in there is pretty strong. That's pretty dominant in the glass, anyways. Once again, it's a moderately viscous whiskey. I was expecting it to be heavy and creamy on the mouthfeel, which it starts out very, very creamy, but only for a couple seconds. It immediately dries out. So it goes very, very dry. Very, very ethanol in the bite. There's an ethanol bite that kind of picks up mid palate and carries through to the finish. You get a lot of corn. That grain mustiness starts out up front. It moves into a very distinguished corn dust flavor. You pick up a sweetness in the middle that is like probably a caramel, not really a vanilla. Moves into ethanol and barrel tannin, so you get a little bit of that oak tannin in there. And then it finishes with just a hint of black pepper, a dry finish, and a little bit of oak. So this tastes like something that I think if you sit with it, over time it's going to change and open up a little bit. I think you can pick out quite a bit of stuff out of it. That grain musty smell though really dominates it as far as nose, and it really dominates it on the forward end of the palate. I really like this one. I like some of those odder flavors that you can get out of stuff, as long as it doesn't stretch into super funk, right? Like a little bit of funkiness is awesome, but if you get way out there, you color way outside the line. The interesting thing about this is for a bourbon, you do not get most of the classic bourbon notes in here, so this is something a little bit different, which I rather enjoy. Good little bottle of whiskey. So thank you to my buddy Jim for bringing this to elk camp with us. I really appreciate that. And it's a good little whiskey. Like I said, somewhere in the 27 to probably $35 range, depending on where you're at. So please drop in the comments below what you can find this bottle for in your area and what your thoughts on it are. I'd greatly appreciate that. Yeah. Boy, that grain funk just, it dominates everything. I can't really get past it too much. Anyway, so this is installment number 2 elk hunting stories. So first week of season was kind of a bust. We were into elk several days, but we didn't like the calling, the bugling, all that was not working out. We busted a lot of elk, a lot of swirling winds, a lot of downfall. So 2 weeks later, one of the guys I originally hunted with, he said, "Hey man, I'm gonna try and get back there this weekend." And I thought, okay, maybe I can get away for a weekend and try that as well. Well, then my wife said, "Hey, why don't we come with? Let's see if we can maybe rent a camper or something, and me and our son we'll come with you and we'll do the camping thing." I said, "Awesome." So we found that we could rent a camper in Casper. So we went and picked up a camper, and first experience ever towing a camper, doing anything with a camper. It towed really, really well behind the truck, which was nice. And I think they said that it was a 22 footer, and the dry weight on it was like 3,500 pounds, something like that. So we picked it up, drove out there. Everything was good, set up camp, whatever, went out for the first night. First night I only got out for about an hour. It was kind of a bust, didn't really come up with anything. So the next morning, I was again by myself. Next morning, get out, man, hear a couple of bugles. Got on 2 different bugling bulls. Forewent one to try and get on the other. The other one sounded bigger. And then about the time I nearly caught up to him, then nothing, no more calls. So I kept pressing my luck. I was kind of in that 70 to 100 yard range. And look over, and through a downed tree in like a perfect little framed window, I see the head of a cow elk staring at me from about 60 yards off. I should have known better. I should have gone a little bit slower. But she saw me, didn't like what she saw. She bolted. But the bull, I don't know where the bull was, but presumably the bull was further back. I didn't think he had bolt, so I sat there for a while and called nothing. And then again, silently, there was a little raghorn walking in about a half hour later off to my side and about 60 yards, and he just never presented a shot. My calls, he never really seemed to care too much about. It was just a very odd experience, and I thought, okay, well, if hunting's going to be this good, this will be great. So I was meeting up with the other guy that evening, so we met up. Hunted the rest of the day, didn't come up with anything. We proceeded to go through the woods. We bumped an elk about 100 yards in because the thought, the wind was blowing this way and we were here, and we thought, okay, well, we'll circle back so that the wind's in our favor to where the elk were this morning, because I was pretty sure they had bedded somewhere kind of in that area, and I thought, well, maybe if the wind in our favor, we'll walk into the bedding area, we'll call. Well, the storm that had chased me out from the first week, and if you remember, I said the blowdown the first week was already double what it had been the year before. Well, the blowdown this year, and if I can get some pictures to turn out, I will put them in the video because it's kind of nuts. The blowdown was insane. It took us about 3 hours to go roughly a quarter mile. There were places where we would go 50 or 60 yards and not touch the ground because we were walking on trees the whole time. In order to go forward, you had to go backwards and then 50 yards this way and 50 yards that way to try and get through. And even at that point, about every 50 to 100 yards, you'd hit a stack of trees that were 3-4 deep and, chest high or higher off the ground. A couple of the pictures I got, pictures never do it justice, but there is one picture that I have that there are trees stacked up roughly 20 feet into the air. It was nuts. The plus side was you could see now like 50 to 100 yards. The downside was it took you 20 minutes to get that 100 yards because you were crawling over trees the whole way to get there. So this hunting area just became way more difficult. It is not easy access anymore, which might be good because it might drive a lot of hunters away. Um, Another downside is it's ripe for an absolute rager of a forest fire, which I'm sure will probably happen sooner than later, which would definitely make this a much better hunting area after the fire. But yeah, it was just rough going. So we, we just rode the struggle bus the whole way through that, slogging. We ended up going down the mountain like 300 feet. We lost like 300 feet of elevation to walk a creek bottom so we could get back up on top just to avoid a bunch of stuff. And we walked through, we made a couple stands and called, and just no answers. No animals came in. It was kind of disappointing considering that morning it started out really, really well. And then the next morning, I was like, okay, well, maybe the morning time will pick up. We went out during the morning, nothing. It was a Thursday night. I went out for an hour. Friday we hunted. Saturday we went out. Nothing during the morning. I mean, not a peep. Just dead quiet. The entire woods was dead quiet. That was a very common theme this whole hunting season. We'd go out. The birds would be quiet. The squirrels would be quiet. Although the squirrels also sound like grizzly bears coming through the woods at times. They'd be breaking tree limbs and whatever else. But it was just so quiet out there. No bugling, no elk calls, no cow calls, no nothing. I mean, it was just tough. So my buddy had to pull out like noon on Saturday, and so we got back, and the first night in the camper, I think we maybe left the window slightly cracked or something. It got really cold in the camper. And because we had no electricity and stuff, we didn't have the heat or anything like that. We had to turn the stove on, burn some propane to get some heat in there, and it would immediately dissipate. So the little guy, he had some trouble at night. He got a little bit cold. We got cold. Made for a little bit miserable camping. And then the whole next day while I was out hunting, my wife, she had to stay with the kid, and I guess that was a little bit problematic. Plus, we had the dog. So dog was a knobhead on top of a screaming kid or whatever. The second day, everybody did a little bit better and things weren't so bad, but we came back to camp at noon and it was like, well, we'd gotten more sleep that night and whatever else. But, it's like, well, we either leave now and return to the camper now, or we have to wait till Monday because you can't return the camper on a Saturday. So, we ended up just pulling stakes. We had rented the camper through Monday, but, we just pulled stakes and just, camping with a 2-month-old can be a challenge, especially when you drive entirely across the state to do it. But on the plus side, 7 hours in the car or in the truck, and the kid did awesome. So, you learn a little bit. And then driving home, of course, that was the other factor. Was it was supposed to rain, get windy and whatever, and of course it did. So we were like, well, if it's gonna get rainy, whatever, let's just pull stakes and not deal with that. So we left, but driving all the way back into Casper, we were fighting like a 40-mile-an-hour crosswind, so travel was a little bit slower, and all kinds of good stuff like that. So round 2 of elk hunting, another goose egg. In the same location, elks still really weren't all that active. Called in another hunter. Again, guys in tree stands all over the place. I mean, personal gripe, I hate the fact that Wyoming allows trail camera use during hunting season. Now, I know Montana, I like their rules. So you can have a trail camera, but it's illegal to use them during hunting season. Now, granted, there's plenty of assholes out there that still use them. And I understand the utility of them, but I hate the fact that we are now in this time of life where there is no privacy anymore. You can't even go out in the woods and expect there to be privacy because somebody could have a trail camera literally anywhere in the woods, even out in the mountains, which kind of drives me nuts. And from one standpoint, like to take it to a far extreme, not that it's the main goal, but say you got a little kid out there who needs to go take a leak or whatever, or you got your little daughter out there who needs to go take a leak behind a tree, and now there's a photo op there, like I know that's a little bit sick and twisted and a bit extreme, but like there's just no privacy anymore. You can't get away from people and their damn trail cameras. Like spend some time out in the woods. Go out there and learn something instead of just having all this technology. I don't know. Personal gripe, I hate the fact that, you just are never alone and somebody's always taking a picture of something out there. So yeah, anyways, if you're a person who uses trail cameras, I don't know, try and be curious. Quit being a jackass and just have them all over the place. I would love to see Wyoming either outlaw them altogether or at least outlaw them during hunting season. So, anyways, off my high horse there. It just drives me nuts. But yeah, hunting was tough, even the second go round. But camping was good. So, spent a little time with the family. Tested out camping in a camper, see how that went. I think as the kid gets a little older, that definitely would work out just fine. Be kind of fun to do. So, yeah, that's my final thoughts on that. Douglas and Todd by Ed Phillips and Sons Company, Princeton, Minnesota. That's the name of the distillery. Yeah, check them out. It's not bad. It is not what you would expect from a traditional bourbon. Even as it sits here, it's kind of a corn dust, but not really. It's more malty funk than that. So, yeah. It's an interesting one. This would be a good one to just sit, relax, and explore. So go ahead. It's a little bit higher proof as well. So go ahead, check it out. See what you can get it for in your area. Drop it in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and share if you're getting anything out of these videos. If you're not, thumbs down. Tell me what sucks. Tell me what you'd like to see. I would greatly appreciate that. 2 more elk hunting episodes. 2 more elk hunting stories. Granted, this is the high level overview, and as I said, I don't have any video footage during the entire hunting season because yeah, we just I have nothing to show you really. I got a couple of pictures, like I said, that'll be interesting for you, but I will say, going back in reverse a little bit before I wrap this all up, we did have a couple bottles of scotch and other whiskey with us in camp during the first week when it was all of us guys hanging out. Brought out the cigars, brought out the pipes, just had a good old guys week of adventure. We ate elk roasts and sloppy joes, and like we ate like kings, which was awesome. Everybody in the group, really good cooks, like to explore. My buddy from Laramie, he brought some homemade mead. My buddy from Minnesota brought a homemade elk pastrami that we made Reuben sandwiches with. I mean, come on. It was, we were living the lap of luxury. We killed a couple of grouse. So one night we had everybody had their own grouse for dinner. So fresh grouse, that was awesome. Yeah, just a great time. So anyways, hopefully you guys are enjoying some of these stories and you're enjoying some of the whiskey. We'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.